Thanks for joining us on Squawk. I'm Bruce Whitfield. You're watching CNBC Africa, first in business worldwide. David Shapiro from Sasfin and Sasha Narishkin from Vestac are here to give us the latest in market news. But before we do that, something far more important. Put your foot on the table, David Shapiro. What a funky guy he is.
You like my Chelsea boots?
I like your Chelsea boots. I think they're absolutely brilliant. Leave them there long enough so that we can focus on them, please. What's happened to the Woolies share price recently,
This
Sasha?
is Country Road.
Yes.
Hey, very, very good value for money.
But that's the point, isn't it? I mean, here in a world where Mr. Price stole Woolies' market segment in terms of basics and basic clothing, and many of the other retailers went into that space, Woolies could no longer dominate it, and so they've gone all posh. They even clothed David Shapiro.
Quality never lies, does it?
You know, many a true word. Witchery,
Yes?
Country Road, Trenery. In fact, the Australians make very good clothes. I think they're underrated.
They're all made in China and Vietnam.
Design.
Yes.
Design.
Quality control in Australia.
No, these are made in, I don't know where they're made.
We'll take them
They're
off
very
later.
comfortable. Very comfortable.
They look very good. I noticed them immediately as David Shapiro walked in this evening. Welcome to Squawk. Other than fashion, of course, we do talk about markets, we do talk about companies, we do talk all about shares. But the big story this week, and I think it's a big story, inflation at 5.5%. That was the big surprise because inflation was expected to be in at 5.8%. The market was quite pleasantly surprised by that, Sasha.
I think so. And I think at the same time, on the same day that we saw better European PMI data. So it might be a function of both why the Rand firmed up. You know, obviously better European markets. Remember, they're still an important trading partner of ours. But the inflation number continues to surprise. There was an article earlier in the week by Paul Krugman explaining why he thought the inflationary outlook was better than most people had anticipated.
Summarize?
Well,
Let's test his memory, see if he read it with it and paid attention.
No, I didn't. Normally, Paul Krugman just writes short little pieces in that op-ed column of his in the New York Times. And you're only allowed, 10 articles a month? Is that right?
I don't know.
Yeah, you quickly run out of them, so
Yeah.
you just move to another browser. That's the trick. Now, the whole idea is that we're becoming a lot more efficient than we used to be. So you'll know that, just in the preparation of these notes, they can be done in 2 minutes.
It
Whereas
takes
if
me
you
2.5 hours.
2.5 hours, whereas before it took you 2 days.
3.5 hours, yes.
No, but it's just the efficiencies that have been built in just on a
This
production
is
side.
taking 2.5 hours.
It is. So talking about efficiencies, can you say it quicker?
We're more efficient as human beings than we were at any other point in history.
If you'd said that, we could have saved so much time. The inflation number surprised you, David?
They did 5.5%. I thought with the Rand where it was, I thought that we're going to find.
The cynic
inflation
suggests
going
it's a
up.
bit like a sewage pipe. Once it gets blocked and it backs up, there's a problem. And once it unblocks, you're in for a whole
My
big
shoes
surprise.
are costing me a lot more than I thought they would. I think inflation is going to hurt us.
Stats SA has got a fabulous gadget on its website, and you can actually go and calculate your own inflation. I'm sure they've done the algorithm so it comes out and comes roughly close to whatever the official inflation rate is. I didn't do mine properly, and I got an inflation rate of 4,744%, which feels about right.
Feels like Zimbabwe.
It does. Sometimes it does feel like that. Let's look at some of the big company news on the week. Amplat's first half earnings. I spoke to the chief executive, Chris Griffith, earlier on this week. He didn't sound as bleak as I thought he would.
I thought he sounded pretty bleak when he said that the cost of mining platinum is going to go up to 17,000 Rand an ounce. That's pretty bleak because if you translate the current platinum price at 1430 or something like that into rands, it's just 14,000 Rand. So there's a 3,000 gap. He may be playing to his strategy of needing to reduce the number of shafts that he has and saying that, but it's an alarming number. And what it does identify that there are tough times ahead. So while on the income side they might be doing okay, on the capital side, in other words, they have to lay out cash for advancement. I think they're under pressure. So it's an industry that one's got to watch very carefully. I still think it's too early to delve into it, to dive into it.
Well, when you look at it, Sasha, they've got a debt burden that's being boosted by 2.5 billion rand, and 30% more debt than they did have. They've not been able to rationalise the workforce. They are in a process of I was going to say 419s, but that's a scam, isn't it? It's Section 189 or whatever it is, the piece of paper you've got to fill in and the engagement with Labour on that particular front. Cutbacks are inevitable and they go through the legal process right now. Surely, even by now, Susan Shabangu has realised that we don't have a sustainable platinum industry unless we allow them to run the business like a business.
Yeah, but remember that of that big debt burden, there's an internal loan to Anglo, the parent shareholder. Which,
okay.
So I think that's about 11.5 billion
Okay,
of that big number. So, you know, I mean, they could essentially, and maybe there's another rights issue in the offing, and they could do again a swap there out for...
They're going to need cash.
Yeah.
I think whichever way you look at it. And tomorrow we're going to hear about Mr. Kutafani comes out with his plans for Anglo. The results come out. And I think it's going to be quite important to know what they're going to do with Anglos and where they see it.
Because
whether it's part of their long-term plans or not.
Anglos, I mean, you know a bit about this in terms of Anglo-Americans, South American operations. What's it called? What's the iron ore operation they're called?
Minas Rio.
Minas Rio.
Yeah.
Minas Rios. The most expensive iron ore asset in the world.
Yeah, the most expensive iron ore project.
Not even an asset.
Yeah.
It's a liability.
No, I mean,
Yes.
and of course there's, you know, a mere 600 odd kilometers in getting it to the port, which has been delayed because of conservation issues. I think they found a massive underground river somewhere in the jungle. And plus also they seem to have thought that they'd steamroll the process through. But a friend of mine who actually is an iron ore miner on a very small scale in Brazil tells me there's something like 85 different codes that you need to comply with. And he had written down that he had complied with 60, but he was still mining, you know, because it's always work in progress in some sort of a way. So, and each state, of course, has different rules and regulations too, because it's state-based. So it's going to be very tricky. And with the benefit of hindsight, they should have just sunk more money into Columella.
Yeah, but they're trying to sell that. They're trying to sell half. Certainly, I got an email.
So David, would you like to buy half an iron ore?
No, you got it right. Because I said that they were trying to get rid of the whole thing, and they said no, we're only trying to get.
They sent you one of those emails.
Yeah, correcting
emails.
my views and that. So even if they sell half, I mean, it means they're trying to downsize. So if you look at the whole Anglo-American, they're trying to downsize and get it more efficient.
Quality.
You know,
And Kutafani's got a better than even chance, surely.
He has, but it's not going to be the Anglos that we knew. It's not going to be the Anglos of 44 Main Street, you know, where you had to take off your shoes as you walked up the stairs into those hallowed halls of...
I never had the privilege.
No, I know. I did. I went there for lunch once, and it was like eating with the Queen. I could imagine it was the same kind of thing. Food wasn't great.
Were you allowed to speak first when you were in the presence of Ogilvy Thompson and others?
It was, in fact. It was Ogilvy Thompson and Mike King and everyone. They were lovely people, but the only thing that had captured my eye was the most beautiful tapestry on the wall. You know, magnificent. That's probably worth more than Anglo.
That's worth more than Anglo Platinum is at the moment. Let's have a look then at the other Anglo subsidiary, Kumba Iron Ore. They seem to be having a far better time of it. 90% of what they produce in South Africa goes down the Sishen railway line to Walfish Bay and
off to China.
Buzzes off to, well, 2/3 of that buzzes off to China and into other parts of the world. That's an extraordinarily bad news story.
It's a very good news story that they actually that we're not using it and that there's big margins.
We can't use it and we can't transform.
I think what attracted me is if you look at the cost of actually mining that. Columella was what, 159. I can't remember exactly. I haven't got the numbers, but it was less than 200 rand a ton, 200 and. Sishen as well. So there's huge margins they're making on that. So even if the iron ore price comes down, they can still pay very, very healthy dividends. And I think that's the benefit of,
that's probably the key in all of this is Anglo is going to extract as much cash as they can. And I've also heard a rumor that I don't know how they do it or raise the money to take the rest of it off the market. I've heard that.
But then what you've got to do is not buy the mothership. You don't buy Anglos, you buy the subsidiaries.
Kumba.
Correct. But then you've got single commodity exposure, and there are lots of people who don't want to own single commodities. So you're going to take a lot more punches on the chin. But in recent days, the iron ore price has been moving north again. I mean, what you must remember...
Sitting at about $140 a tonne or thereabouts. Yeah,
what you must remember is there are a lot of iron ore poor quality producers in China who are unprofitable at a certain level on the iron ore price because their stuff is not as high quality as ours. Not all iron ore is the same.
What's the lifespan of Sishen and Kolomela?
Kolomela is much longer. I think we're talking upwards of
Well,
4
I know-
decades.
Okay,
So
yeah,
and they
that's
plan to
long.
ramp it up to 70 million tons per annum in their South African operation. So
'Cause
we're
I remember Tabazimbi when I was young, and I'm not
That's
that young
finished.
anymore. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
You know how long it's taken to finish. These things can go on.
Well,
for a
that's
long
great.
time.
I mean, they're really substantial resources, and it's a case of when you buy these things, you're looking at you're buying the company, you're buying a long-term story. And if Kumba's going to be producing iron ore in the Northern Cape for the next 4 decades, well, geez, at $450 a share, it's possibly.
a little factoid about that Sishen line. It's the longest train in the world and heaviest train in the world from this
It is-
middle of nowhere
it
to
is so
a port
impressive.
in the middle of nowhere.
You go up
I
that
think
you
what's
go up
it-
that coastline to Saldanha, and you just look at this railway line, and you look at these bloomin' trains coming under the bridges and things. It is actually a sight worth seeing if you're a bit of a geek. But as you're not, let's move on. This is the world's
Train spotting.
This is the world's biggest MTN fan. So I'm not going to ask him this question, but the chief financial officer of MTN. MTN says we've had to replace our financial officer. He's gone.
Yeah.
And then the next day they go, oh dear, people think he's a crook. So he's not a crook. It's for governance reasons, but he's still gone. And nobody's feeling all that enamored with MTN at the moment, except Sasha.
It's a good company, and the market's virtually brushed it aside. But you can't leave shareholders in suspense or the market and say, what did he do? Was he crooking the books? Was he taking bribes? Was he making bribes? Was he giving? No one really knows.
The trouble is,
Was he overspending
We
on
will-
his corporate
Bruce-
expense account?
Yeah.
Your investigative journalists will find out, and they'll make the story a lot worse than if you just came clean.
well, a lot truer
Yeah,
than if you told the
exactly.
truth. Yes.
Yeah.
Well,
we're
essentially
having
they
an
said there's
investigation.
no earnings impact.
Yeah, but
Probably
still,
not.
You got a chief financial officer. You don't want him to be compromised in any way.
He's number two. It's like
Yes.
it's like your finance minister. He's a treasury. He keeps the books and records, raises money, pays out money, etc.
That sort of thing only happens in Spain.
Of course, it can never happen here. Okay, on to others. Of course, the CPI number we've spoken about. The Aspen GSK deal. The Aspen share price bumped up nicely on Wednesday when they came out with the value of their GSK deal. You just love this company, David. Are you as big a fan as David is of Aspen?
We've had holders since 30 rand, so shares. So yes.
I've had since 29.90.
I wish I bought
Doing
it.
better, David.
I wish I bought it to 25.
And he reinvested his paltry dividends.
But the point is that this has been the greatest success story in the history of offshore, South African offshore companies. Probably better returns out of Aspen than even out of SAB.
I think so. And Glaxo, of course, are the biggest shareholder here. So they're taking their old legacy assets. So they're keeping themselves sexy as like an R&D, pushing the envelope type drugs company in the developed world. And this is our partner in the developing world. And I think Steven Saad has probably got everything to do with that, him and Gus Attridge. But I think you've got to ask yourself succession plan questions, but I don't think he's going anywhere anytime soon.
When we look, however, then at Adcock Ingram, and now the Government Employees Pension Fund, the PIC, and I think it was Oasis or one of those guys come out recently saying, we need a local shareholder for Adcock Ingram. And you say, hold on a second, the global drugs
Tiger
business,
Brands,
vitamins
though?
industry is, well, Bidvest. Because it was spun out of Tiger Brands, wasn't
Exactly.
it? Exactly. Maybe they can come
We
back.
had a local shareholder.
But they are putting shackles or wanting to put shackles on Adcock Ingram from an expansion point of view.
That's why I'm backing CFR. When I say backing in inverted commas, because what CFR is the equivalent of Aspen in South America. Very aggressive, expanding, know that market. And for that reason, I would be prepared to buy them if they had Adcock Ingram here. On that basis, here you are, we have another chance of a global company. If we don't go that route, we're back with Adcock Ingram. Yes, we can look at the metrics now and the measures now and say it's cheap. They put all this investment into building factories and that. They've got to put the through flow through there as well. So from that point of view, you can make a justification to hold on to Adcock. But from a global point of view, where they're going to be, and what's a local shareholder going to do?
Precisely. What is a local shareholder
so-
do? Brian Joffy's got some ideas. He just hasn't shared them with us, and maybe he's still hoping against hope that he can swoop. But will he pay 74 rand a share for Adcock Ingram?
I think Brian's the kind of person who wouldn't. He would generate something out of it. He'd bring someone in that could actually expand it. Will take a bit of time. So I wouldn't write him off in that respect. You know, I'd rather, if I'm going to back a shareholder, it would be him, a local shareholder.
By this time next week, Absa will no longer be listed on the JSE. Yes, don't choke on whatever it is you're having. It'll be called Barclays Africa because Absa's name disappears from the JSE listings board on the 1st of August. And then you have Barclays Africa. Although when you go to your local friendly Barclays Africa branch, it'll be called Absa. More with David Shapiro and Sasha Narishkin in a moment. And can a movie really be banned in our society? It's one of the big stories this week. I know lots of movies that should be banned just because they're pitifully awful, but we'll talk more about that.